So I'm in Chile, in the Atacama Desert, sitting in a hotel lobby because that's the only place that I could get a Wi-Fi connection. And I have this picture up on my screen, and a woman comes up behind me. She says, "Oh, that's beautiful. What is it? Is that Jackson Pollock?" And unfortunately, I can be a little too honest. I said, "No, it's penguin shit." And, excuse me? And I could sense that she thought I was speaking synecdochically. So I said, no, really, it's penguin shit. Because I had just been in the Falkland Islands taking pictures of penguins. This is a Gen 2 penguin. And she was still skeptical. So literally, a few minutes before that, I had downloaded this scientific paper about calculations on avian defecation, which is really quite interesting because it turns out you can model this as something called Pucelle flow, and you can learn an awful lot about the physics of the avian rectum. Actually, technically it's not a rectum, it's called a cloaca. At this point, she stops me, and she says, "Who are you? What do you do?" And I was stuck because I didn't have any way to describe what I do. And so in some sense, this talk today is my answer to that. It's a selection of a random bunch of the stuff that I do. And it's very hard for me to make sense of it, so I'm not sure that you can. It's the kind of thing that I sit up late at night thinking about sometimes, often at 4 in the morning. So some people are afraid of what I do. Some people think I am the nerd Tony Soprano, and in response, I've ordered a bulletproof pocket protector. I'm not sure what these people think, because I don't speak Norse, but I'm not thinking monstert is a good thing. I don't know, So one of the things that I love to do is travel around the world and look at archaeological sites, because archaeology gives us an opportunity to study past civilizations and see where they succeeded and where they failed. Use science to work backwards and say, well, really, what were they thinking? And recently, I was in Easter Island, which is an incredibly beautiful place, an incredibly mysterious place, because no matter where you go in Easter Island, you're struck by these statues called the moai. The place is 64 square miles. They made, so far as we can tell, 900 of them. Why on earth? And if you haven't read Jared Diamond's book, Collapse, I totally recommend that you do. He's got a great chapter about it. Basically, these people committed ecological suicide in order to make more of these. And somewhere along the line, somebody said, I know, let's cut down the last tree and commit suicide because we need more identical statues. One thing that isn't a mystery, actually, when I grew up, so I was a little kid, I've seen these pictures, I thought, well, why that look on the face? Why that brow? I mean, it's such a powerful thing. Where did they get that inspiration? And then I met Yo-Yo, who is the native Rapa Nuian guide, and if you look at Yo-Yo's face, you kind of figure out where they got it. There's many mysteries of these statues. Everyone wants to know how they made them, how did they transport them. This woman in the foreground is Joanne Van Tilburg. She's the leading archaeologist working in Easter Island today, and she has studied the statues for 20-some years. And she has detailed records of every single statue. The one on the page here is the same that's up there. One interesting problem is the stone isn't very hard. So this used to be completely smooth. In fact, many of the statues, when you excavate them, the backs are totally smooth, almost glass smooth. But after 1,000 years out in the weather, they look like this. Joanne and I have just embarked on a project to digitize them all. And we're going to do a very high-res digitization. First, because it's a way of preserving them. Second, we have these ideas about how you can algorithmically then learn a few of the mysteries about them. How long have they been standing in what positions? And maybe indirectly get at some of the issues of what caused them to be the way they are. While I was in Easter Island, Comet McNaught was there also. So you get a gratuitous picture of a moai with a comet. I also have an archaeological project going on in Egypt. Going on is perhaps a little bit strong. We're trying to get all of the permissions, get everything all set to get it going. So I'll talk about it at a future TED. But there's some amazing opportunities in Egypt as well. Now, another thing I do is I invent stuff. In fact, I design nuclear reactors. Not a joke. This is the conventional nuclear fuel cycle. The red line is what is done in most nuclear reactors. It's called the open fuel cycle. The white lines are what's called an advanced fuel cycle, where you reprocess. Now, this is the normal way it's done. It's got the huge advantage that it does not create carbon pollution. It has a lot of disadvantages. Each one of these steps is extremely expensive. It's potentially dangerous. And they have the interesting property that the step cannot be performed in anyone's backyard, which is a problem. So our reactor eliminates these steps, which, if we can actually make it work, is a really cool thing. Now, it's kind of nuts to work on a new nuclear reactor. There's no reactor's been even built to an old design, much less a new one, in the United States for 25 years. It's the kind of very high risk, but potentially very high return thing that we do. Changing a totally different field, we do a lot of stuff in solid state physics, particularly an area called metamaterials. A metamaterial is an artificial material which manipulates, in this case, electromagnetic radiation in a way that you couldn't otherwise. So this device here is an invisibility cloak. You may not seem that, but if you were a microwave, this is how you would view it. Rays of light, in this case microwave light, come in, and they just squish around the center and they come back the other side. Now you could do that with mirrors from one angle. The cool thing is this does it from all angles. Metamaterials, now, unfortunately, A, it only works in the microwave, and B, it doesn't work all that well yet. But metamaterials are an incredibly exciting field. It's, today I'd like to say it's a $0 billion business, but in fact it's negative. But someday, maybe it's going to work. We do a lot of work in biomedical fields. In this case, we're working with a major medical foundation to develop inexpensive ways of diagnosing diseases in developing countries. So they say the eyes are the windows on the soul. Turns out it's a window on a whole lot more stuff. And these happen to be my eyes, by the way. Now, I'm also very interested in cooking. While I was at Microsoft, I took a leave of absence and went to chef school in France. I used to work also while at Microsoft at a leading restaurant in Seattle. So I do a lot of cooking. I've been on a team that won the World Championship of Barbecue. But barbecue is interesting because it's one of these cult foods like Chile or bouillabaisse. Various parts of the world have a cult food that people get enormously attached to. There's tremendous traditions, there's secrecy. And I'm trying to use a very scientific approach. So this is my latest cooker. And if this looks more complicated than the nuclear reactor, that's because it is. But if you get to play with all those knobs and dials, and of course, really the control over there does it all in software, you can make some terrific ribs. This is a high-speed centrifuge. You should all have one in your kitchen beside your Turbo Chef. This subjects food to a force about 50,000 times that of normal gravity. And oh boy, does it clarify chicken stock? You would not believe it. I perform a series of ghoulish experiments on food. In this case, trying to calibrate a mathematical model so that one can predict exactly what the internal cooking times are. Turns out, A, it's useful, and for a geek like me, it's fun. Theory is red, black is experiment. So I'm either really good at faking it, or this particular model seems to work. So another random thing I do is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI.